dear and propitious to inculcate in one's own life. Those who take these words to the world are indeed great benefactor of the world. We are studying Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play, and it is the section where the stay masters stay at Shampukur. Shampukur is in Calcutta, in between Balaram's house and Swami Vivekananda's ancestral home. When an incarnation comes, he brings his retinue. So Sri Ramakrishna brought along with him various helpers from various traditions, especially Vaishnavas. Some were Shaktas, and even one from Buddhism, two from Christianity and yoga, and Swami Vivekananda was from the 7 rishis, Nara Narayan, one of the rishis. So Vaishnavas, once Sri Ramakrishna saw a vision in trance, he saw that a kirtan party, kirtan means singing the glories of God, approached from the far end of Panchavati and traveled to Sri Ramakrishna, and in that party he saw Krishna Chaitanya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda. They were singing and dancing. In that party, he saw M and also Balaram. So Balaram is from Vaishnava background. And true to the teachings of Vaishnava, he had those traits. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught few essential character of Vaishnava. Trinadapi Shunichena. One should be lowly, because most of the time we are puffed up because of our ego. One should curtail this ego by being humble. So Trinadapi Shunichena. And one should be very, very tolerating. Taroreva Shahishnuna. One should forbear like a tree. Even you cut the branches of tree, it doesn't say anything. One should be tolerating like that. Trinadapi Shunichena Taroreva Shahishnuna. Amanina Manadin. People, generally what happens? They are so puffed up and they praise that I did this, I did that. They're always boasting. But here Sri Krishna Chaitanya taught the devotees that give honor to those who don't get honor. Tarori Vashishnana Amani Namanidin and Kirtaniya Sadahari, and all the time sing the glories of God. This is the Chaitanya prayer. So Balaram was like that. Balaram was always humble, very humble. Though Sri Ramakrishna and all the devotees would come to his house and he was giving feast, but he would stand at a corner and with folded hands like a servant. Once Sri Ramakrishna went to see Vidyasagar. So after the talk, when Sri Ramakrishna came down, and then they saw a man was standing. Who is that? Then they discovered that it was Balaram. Oh, why did not you come upstairs? He said, no, maybe I would disturb people. So he was so humble. So we are studying the character of Balaram. These are very important, like avatar. What is avatar? Avatar cannot be indicated. So it is like a blank paper. So if it is blank, if I say this is avatar, then people will laugh at me. But then if I make some dots and then a picture, okay, like this is picture. So the interaction with the devotees are like those dots or some corners, dark corners. So avatar is depicted like that. So interaction with devotees gives us an idea what an incarnation is. So that is why we should know whom Sri Ramakrishna brought along with him. And all are unique. Say Narendranath, later Swami Vivekananda was unique. So was Latu, so was Ramakrishnananda, so was Abhidananda. Everyone was unique. And Sri Ramakrishna would say, sorry, not Sri Ramakrishna. Swami Vivekananda later said, each one of us should be original because our master was original. So that is why Balaram also was original. There was another character, Nag Mahashay, a great devotee. He was also original, totally merged in devotion. So that is another devotee. So today we'll think about Balaram, whatever is there, and how Balaram, in spite of all the difficulties, served Sri Ramakrishna. When he came to Dakshineshwar, Sri Ramakrishna told, that day that Brahman leader came there, Shen. What Shen? Keshav Chandra Shen came. So it was some food was served, like puffed rice, etc. But he was standing aside. Sri Ramakrishna called him near. He could understand that this is my Rasadar. Rasadar means like a supplier. So later he told him that mother has kept you many things with you. You have to give those later. That is why he served Sri Ramakrishna later. So in spite of all the difficulties. So we'll go as we read. Paul.
Yep. All right. So is it 29 Balaram's respect and devotion for the master displeases his relatives? That's where we're at?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Excellent. We have already told some stories about Balaram. He and his immediate family were devoted to the master and had great respect for him, which displeased some of his relatives. They had sufficient reasons for their grievance. Balaram's relatives had been born into the Vaishnava tradition and were raised in that faith, so their religious views were dogmatic to some extent and firmly rooted in external practices and rituals. So neither did they understand the spiritual attitude of the master, who had strong faith in the truth of all religions and shunned religious marks, nor did they feel that one should be sympathetic to such a person. Balaram was gradually becoming open-minded by his association with the master and by the master's grace. Balaram's relatives considered this to be a sign of impiety. In addition, those who have wealth, fame, aristocracy, and all other sorts of worldly prosperity very often become vain and egotistic. Balaram's relatives could trace their lineage back to the celebrated Krishnaram Basu, and they considered themselves equally great. Balaram was disregarding the prestige of his dynasty and frequently visiting the master at Dakshineshwar for spirituality as if he were an ordinary person. He even took his wife and children there. When his relatives learned of all this, their sensibilities were wounded, and they determined to dissuade him from seeing the master.
Okay, a little background, it will be helpful. Balaram was one of the Jamindars. Hariballabh Basu, his brother, and Nimai Chandra Basu. So they were Jamindar. Jamindar means landlord. So they have very big chunk of land, and that is in Kothar. Kothar is now Odisha, near Bhubaneswar, Puri. But right from his young age, Balaram was totally dedicated to God. He never enjoyed this power and pelf. So he said that you do all kinds of these worldly things. I'm not interested. Just give me some remuneration so that I can maintain myself. And he was a regular visitor to Puri temple, Jagannath temple. He would do japa the whole day and come and eat a little. So that way he was there. So he was from Jamindar. So that time they had proud. Therefore, why a Vaishnava is going to a Shakta, a Sri Ramakrishna? Number one. Number two, he's a say from a aristocratic family. Why should he go here and there? So all these were the point. Because of that, they were not happy. But what happened, actually, he was not in Calcutta. That house, that Balaram Mandir, that belongs to Hariballabh Basu, his brother. That was not his house. And he was happy in Puri. But one of his friends wrote him that you like to see God and want to see great people, great sadhu, monks. So why not you come here? You'll see a person like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he came just casually because of his letter to see Sri Ramakrishna. And the first day he saw when Keshav Chandra Sen came, and then he could see that while talking, he was merging in God. He was in ecstasy, in samadhi. So he could immediately understand that Sri Ramakrishna was not ordinary person. That is why his devotion was so keen, so intense to Sri Ramakrishna. But his family did not like it. So Hari Vallabh later came. So we'll read. Yes, go ahead.
30. Their efforts to stop Balaram from visiting the master. When proud people cannot succeed through fair means, they adopt underhanded tactics. Some members of Balaram's family were arrogant enough to do this. They repeatedly reminded Balaram of their family prestige and eulogized the great faith and devotion of Bhagavandas Babaji of Kalna and of other Vaishnava saints. When this did not dissuade Balaram from visiting the master, they became malicious and did not hesitate to slander the master from time to time. They had a distorted impression of the master because others had told them that he lacked steadfast devotion to a single deity, was careless about what he ate, did not follow the injunctions of the scriptures in his daily life, was against the use of Vaishnava marks, and so on. When even these efforts had no effect, they resorted to fabricating lies about the master and Balaram and reporting them to Balaram's cousins, Nimai Charan Basu and Harivallabh Basu.
Yeah, there was a reason. That time Sri Ramakrishna's fame was like that. He was Pagla Bamun, means mad Brahmin of Dakshineshwar. Because he did not behave like normal people. Normal people, like all the time, well dressed, and in society they are mingling with various people. But Sri Ramakrishna would talk about God all the time, and sometimes would merge in samadhi, and sometimes even had no cloth on his body, could sometimes carry under the armpit. So there were many reasons for that. But one thing was sure, that he was pure. He was totally dedicated to God. So not many people can understand such situation, such attitude. They want that everybody should be like uh, in the groove, that is, normal traditional way. But if someone behaves in an extraordinary way, not many people understand. So that is why his uh, his relatives, Balaram's relatives, were angry with Balaram. So we cannot blame them, because they could not understand. Not many people could understand Sri Ramakrishna. Yes.
31. Balaram's early life. We have already mentioned that Balaram possessed compassion, detachment, and other noble qualities. He realized that managing an estate required the occasional use of ruthless means, so he entrusted his property to Nimai Charan Basu and received a certain amount of income from him every month. Although it was sometimes insufficient, he somehow managed his household. In addition, ill health prevented him from managing his own estate. He had suffered from dyspepsia during his youth, and his health had deteriorated to such an extent that he had given up normal food for 12 years, living on milk and barley water. While recuperating, he had lived for a long time in Puri, where he spent his time visiting the temple of Lord Jagannath every day, worshiping, doing japa, listening to discourses on the Bhagavata, and keeping the company of holy people. During this time, he had become acquainted with the positive and negative aspects of the Vaishnava sect. We have mentioned earlier that he met the master shortly after arriving in Calcutta for family business, and how that holy association changed Balaram's life.
Yeah, go ahead.
32. Balaram arrives in Calcutta and visits the master. Balaram had come to Calcutta for a few weeks for the marriage of his oldest daughter. Other than this event, his peaceful life had been undisturbed during his 11 years in Puri. Shortly after the wedding, Hari Vallabh Basu purchased a house at 57 Ramkanta Basu Lane Street. Hari Vallabh secretly consulted with Balaram's father and his brothers, and then asked Balaram to live in that house. Balaram's family feared he would renounce home because of his association with the monks in Puri. Thus, Balaram was now deprived of his daily visit to Lord Jagannath and of holy company of the monks. Sadly, he began his life in Calcutta. It seems that previously, before he met the master, he had intended to return to Puri after staying in Calcutta for a short time. Once he had met the master, however, he completely gave up that idea and decided to live in Calcutta permanently to be near the master. From time to time, he became anxious that Hari Vallabh would ask him to vacate the house, or that Nimai would deprive him of the master's holy company by asking him to manage his own estate, which would require him to move to Kotar in Orissa.
So in a Bhagavad Gita also it is said, Aniketa Sthiramati. That means who has no house. So Balaram was like that. There was no house. Though he was one of the partner of the Jamindar. In Kothar, they had Jamindari. So Holy Mother also visited that place. Then they had a house in Vrindavan. Holy Mother visited that place also, Kala Babu's Kunja. And now both the places, Kothar and Kala Babu's Kunja, is with Ramakrishna Mission. And there we have museum and also an ashrama. Ashram in Kothar, museum in Kala Babu's Kunja in Vrindavan. So the thing is, how a person, humble person, is loved by the incarnation, that we can see in the life of Balaram. Pious, I mean, very simple man. But because of his ill health, he was suffering a lot. But in spite of everything, once it happened that the new mutt was at Baranagar, and all the brothers like Narendranath, Rakhal, and all others, they observed Shivaratri. So everybody fasted the whole day and whole night, and singing bhajan and also chanting the name of God, repeating the name of God. And morning, they were to eat something. And Balaram knew. Balaram brought the fruits and sweets. Then only they could have something. So a great lover and great service that he offered to the monks. So that is unforgettable. And that is why when Balaram passed away, Narendranath, later Swami Vivekananda, lamented that, this is the beginning of the end of all this edifice of incarnation. That means gradually all will go. So that was Balaram. Yes, go ahead.
33. Harivalab. Is that right? Harivalab?
Yeah. Hari Vallabh.
Harivalab. It's a long word. Harivalab arrives in Calcutta. Anxious thoughts sometimes foretell future events, as Balaram experienced. What he feared came to pass. Secretly prompted by Balaram's relatives, both of his cousins wrote to him expressing their displeasure. Harivalab also sent news that he would come to Calcutta very soon and stay with him for a few days to discuss an important matter. Although Balaram knew that he had done nothing wrong and was unconcerned on that account, the thought that the course of events could take him away from the master worried him. After long deliberation, he decided that even if his cousins made accusations against him based on what others were saying, he would not leave the master during his illness. Meanwhile, Harivalab arrived in Calcutta. Balaram had made all arrangements so that his cousin would not have any inconvenience or difficulty during his stay with him. He remained calm and firm in his resolve and continued to visit the master openly every day.
Yes, when a devotee surrenders totally and he is not worried about his own affairs, then God takes care. We'll see later how Sri Ramakrishna removed his anxiety by taking help of another devotee. Yes, go ahead.
34. Out of compassion for Balaram, the master asked to see Harivalab. The face is the best mirror of the mind. On the very day that Harivalab arrived in Calcutta, the master saw Balaram's face and understood that some inner struggle was going on. He considered Balaram to be his own and felt empathy with him. So he called him aside and learned everything. He asked, "What sort of man is Hari Vallabh? Can you bring him here someday?" Balaram replied, "Sir, as a man he is good, learned, intelligent, magnanimous, benevolent, charitable, and devout, but he has one defect. He is somewhat gullible, as wealthy people can be. He has formed a mistaken impression of me on the basis of what others have told him and is displeased because I come here. I therefore doubt if he would come at my request." The master said, "Then you need not ask him. Please call Girish here." Girish gladly agreed to introduce Hari Vallabh to the master. He said, "Hari Vallabh and I were classmates in our youth. I always see him whenever he comes to Calcutta, so it won't be difficult for me to bring him here. I'll see him today."
So like this. So Sri Ramakrishna is like a great diplomat. He took help of Girish. Okay, don't worry about it. I'll vanish. So he asked Girish Chandra Ghosh, "Can you bring him?" And he says, "Yes, he was my classmate." So, and Girish was a great intelligent, and one of the intellectuals in Calcutta that time. So the way he behaved with Sri Ramakrishna, that worked half, almost half, and the other half was completed when he saw himself, Sri Ramakrishna. Yes, go ahead.
35. Girish brings Hari Vallabh to the master, whose conduct changes Hari Vallabh's attitude. The next afternoon at 5, Girish arrived with Hari Vallabh and introduced him to the master, saying, "This is Hari Vallabh Basu, my boyhood friend and a government lawyer in Kutuk, Orissa. He has
Katak,
come to see you."
Katak, Odisha.
Katak. The master greeted him warmly, made him sit close by, and said, "I heard about you from others and wanted to meet you, but I was a little apprehensive that you would be very shrewd and calculating." Then he
Open.
said, to Girish, pointing to Hari Vallabh, "But now I see that this isn't the case. He's as simple as a boy. Have you seen his eyes? One can't have such eyes if one's heart is not full of devotion." He suddenly touched Hari Vallabh, then continued, "Look, that apprehension is gone. I feel that you are my very own." Hari Vallabh bowed down, took the dust of his feet, and said, "That is your grace, sir."
See how he converted by even a little touch, like touching. Because, by touch, he would transmit the awareness of the divine awareness. So Sri Ramakrishna, first he took the help of Girish Chandra Ghosh to bring him. So half work was done there. And by touching him, the another half was complete. So, yes, go ahead.
Incredible. Girish then remarked, he should be endowed with devotion. He was born into a family of famous devotees. Krishna Ram Basu is renowned for his devotion, and his piety has brought glory to this part of the country. Who else would be devout if not those who were born into his family?
So when Girish is pleading for devotion for him, so he knew Girish very much. Girish was very famous. So he could understand that Sri Ramakrishna was not ordinary when Girish was totally dedicated to him. So that he could understand. And secondly, by touch, Sri Ramakrishna passed on to him the spiritual realization. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
After a while, the topic of devotion arose. The master said that the main purpose of human life is to attain faith in God, devotion, and complete self-surrender. While talking in that vein, he went into samadhi. When he afterwards regained partial consciousness, he asked one of us to sing a devotional song. In a low voice, he explained the meaning of the song to Hari Vallabh and again went into deep samadhi. When the song ended, 2 or 3 young devotees were also in ecstasy. Hari Vallabh was so moved by the loving appearance and inspiring words of the master that tears welled up in his eyes. He took his leave of the master shortly after sunset.
Totally converted. Yes. Conversion does not mean that it is physical, but mental upliftment. That is the real conversion, is that one. It is not theological. It is uplifting one's own spiritual awareness. Yes.
36.
Hmm.
Why the master touched people while talking to them and its effect. At Dakshineshwar, we sometimes observed that if a newcomer argued with the master, adopting a contrary view, or if a person came to him with a hostile attitude for some reason, the master would tactfully touch that person during their conversation, and immediately the person would begin to accept what he said. Of
You see,
course, he
another
did.
thing, just a minute. Tactfully here, see, like it is a translation, but it is natural. What happened, when Sri Ramakrishna was in that mood, he would touch, like friends, they touch each other. So it is not that out of his cleverness, but it is natural. And love flowed from Sri Ramakrishna. It's not a clever move, but it is a natural, wise move to impart spiritual understanding. Yes.
Of course, he did that only with visitors who pleased him. One day he volunteered the reason for this gesture, telling us, people don't easily accept what others say because they are influenced by egoism and have the attitude that they are in no way inferior to anyone else. Pointing to his body, he explained, as soon as they feel the touch of the being within this and feel the infinite influence of his divine power, their egoism can no longer raise its head. When a hooded snake is touched by a particular herb, it immediately bends its head. My touch has the same effect on an inflated ego. That's why I discreetly touch them during conversation.
Yeah, like that, a kind of plant that when it touches, if you touch that plant, uh, I'm forgetting Lajjavati. So I'm forgetting the English name, but eh, touch me not. Yeah. So if you touch it, then it closes all the leaves. So Sri Ramakrishna would, by his touch, he would transmit his spiritual uh, awareness, his invoke spirituality in that person, which is covered by egotism. That is why, in India, we have a tradition. When we meet monks or great ones, we, after bowing down, then we touch their feet. So this way, um, it shows humility, it shows respect. And in Gita, Bhagavan says that Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatpara sangyatindriya. Those who have Shraddha, one-pointed devotion, humility, and those who are striving hard, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatpara sangyatindriya, and who has control over his senses, they attain knowledge. So this is the reason why the feet is touched. So Sri Ramakrishna would willfully touch so that uh, spiritual awakening happens in that person. Yeah,
Oops. Um,
those words.
right. Those words of the master arose in our minds when we saw how Harivalabh's attitude towards the master changed completely and how he took leave of the master with reverence in his heart. After that, Balaram's cousins never again thought that he was doing wrong in visiting the master. 37. The number of devotees increases. The master gives instruction on sadhana and demonstrates postures conducive to meditation on God with form and without form. Even as the master's illness worsened during his stay at Shayampakur, the number of visitors who were blessed to see him and to receive his grace increased. Harish Chandra Mustafi, Sharda Prashana Mitra, who later joined the Ramakrishna order and became Swami Trigunatitananda, Manindra Krishna Gupta, and other young devotees and householder devotees first met the master here. Some might have visited the master a couple of times in Dakshineshwar, but it was at Shayampakur that they had the opportunity to become close to him. The master observed the character and past impressions of these newcomers and guided them to the form of sadhana that was appropriate for them, either of pure devotion or of devotion combined with knowledge. Whenever the master had an opportunity, he gave them private instructions and inspired them to move forward on their paths. One day, the master showed a young disciple postures and gestures that are appropriate for meditation on God with form and without form. Seated in the lotus position, the master placed the back of his right hand on the palm of his left and then
Like
raised both.
this. Yes.
And then raised both to chest level. With his eyes closed, he said, This is the best posture for all kinds of meditation on God with form. Then, seated in the same position, he placed his right and left hands palms upward on his right and left knees respectively, and brought the tips of the thumb and the index finger of each hand together, keeping
like
the other
this.
fingers straight.
Yeah, like this, like putting on the knees. But this is that previous one is like this.
Fixing his gaze between his eyebrows, he said, This is an excellent posture for meditation on the formless God. As he said that, the master went into samadhi.
So between eyebrows is here. This is called Dvidal chakra here. And sometimes it is first concentrated here. But in other place, Sri Ramakrishna said, when it was asked where one should meditate. So he said, heart is a splendid place. Hriday Dankamarasthan. That means everybody knows that God should be meditated in the heart. Heart here, not physical heart. Heart means the center of our being. What is center of our being? Like if you are standing with someone and someone calls from you from distance, so then you ask, are you calling me? It's not 1 inch up, 1 inch down. It goes directly there. Are you calling me? When we don't say, are you calling me? Or calling me? It goes here. So that is the splendid place where God is to be meditated. And that's why this hand also to be like this. So these are various ways to meditate. In Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan says that one should concentrate at the tip of the nose. So various places are there, but especially upward here, up to Dvidal. And Only those who are advanced student, they meditate on Sahasrar, not for everybody. Yes.
He soon forced his mind back to the normal plane of consciousness and continued. I couldn't show you more. As soon as I sit in that position, my mind is stimulated and becomes absorbed in samadhi, making an air current move upward and hit the wound in my throat. That's why the doctor advised me to avoid going into samadhi. The young disciple said humbly, Sir, why did you show me those techniques? I didn't ask you to. The master replied, That's true, but it's hard for me to remain quiet and refrain from teaching and demonstrating some spiritual techniques to you all. The young disciple was touched by the master's infinite compassion and amazed by his natural inclination towards samadhi.
So, this is called ahetuk kripa sindhu. Ahetuk means without any rhyme and reason. Otherwise, people have no way to know God. It is God who comes out of infinite compassion and shows the way. Because sometimes we don't know what to ask. It is God who, in his presence, the question comes and answer also comes. It is like, if you see the ocean, the water evaporates from there and clouds are formed and it rains there. Similarly, in presence of godly person or incarnation, all these questions come. Sometimes without question he would show and show and tell how to progress in spiritual life. Yes.
People are drawn, 38. People are drawn to the master by the beauty and uniqueness of his actions. An example, Upendra, a judge.
Okay, one thing here said that number of devotees increases. Though that time physically not many people came, many people misjudged him, misunderstood him. And when he was suffering from cancer, many people ran away from him. So when he was at Dakshineshwar, he once counted. So he's okay, you count. So he said, if we take Latu into account, then 31. Latu ke khotale 31 jon. So that is when he was at Dakshineshwar. But Shyampukur, that Calcutta, some more devotees came. But not that many. What I'm trying to tell, that when he was living, not many people could understand. Only those who have great impressions, spiritual impressions with them, they could understand. But later, after Swamiji's return to India from the West, then gradually people tried to understand. More people came. And now it is Sri Ramakrishna everywhere. Though in the West it is not that recognized. Only those who are thinking people, those who are leaders. Leaders means those who are knowledgeable. They only know Sri Ramakrishna, not many people. But in India, now he is a household name. So that happened later. But while he was in this world, he's still in this world. What I'm saying, when he was in this living body, not many people could understand him. Yes, go ahead.
Many newcomers were charmed upon seeing the grace and uniqueness in the master's daily activities. For an example, we shall refer to an event that we heard from Atul Chandra Ghosh, Girish's younger brother. We shall try to record this event in his own language as much as possible. Upendra, a close friend, was a judge who lived away from Calcutta. After I'd become acquainted with the master, I wrote to him, "When you come here next, I shall show you someone wonderful." He came during his Christmas vacation and reminded me of this. I told him, "I thought of introducing you to Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, but now he is ill and living at Shayampakur. Doctors have forbidden him to talk. Moreover, you are a newcomer. How can I take you there?" The day passed. On another day, Upendra came to see my brother Girish. When the topic of the master arose, Girish told him, "Go with Atul and see him someday." Upendra replied, "Atul has been telling me for the last 6 months that he would take me there, but when I reminded him after coming here, he said that it wouldn't be possible now. I told my brother, even we aren't always allowed to see him now. How can I take a newcomer there?" Brother Girish said, "Nonetheless, take him to the master someday. If he's lucky, the master will see him and treat him with love."
Now, one thing more, let me tell. When Keshav Chandra Sen started going to Dakshineshwar, he wrote the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna in his newspaper, journal. So because of that, some more people could know. Even Balaram Bose also came knowing from that journal. And later, we discovered that even Max Muller, who was in England, he also knew about Sri Ramakrishna from that journal. So, some thinking people know about Sri Ramakrishna, and especially because of Keshav Chandra Sen and interaction of Sri Ramakrishna with Brahmo devotees. But many were skeptic. Many could not even understand his stature and what Sri Ramakrishna was. Not many could understand. But gradually he was known to many people. But here, those who came close to Sri Ramakrishna with intimate interaction, such devotees, though number may not be great, but still, in that case, those were very stable and solid people who came in contact with Sri Ramakrishna. Yes, go ahead.
39. Upendra comes to Shayampakur. He experiences the master's affectionate behavior. One afternoon later on, I took Upendra to the master. The room was packed with people sitting on the 2 mats that were spread on the floor near his bed. They were discussing various ordinary topics, such as painting. Ananda Bagchi, a famous painter, was present. The story of melting gold in a goldsmith's shop, and so on. We sat there for a long time, but
so
no
that's
spirit...
what is that? That there is a story. Do you have that, or I should read?
Is it the goldsmith shop?
Yes.
Let me try, Swami. It's the footnote, right? Let me see. Yes. Atul is referring to the amusing story that the master sometimes told us of the skillful goldsmiths who stole gold and silver. A man went to a goldsmith's shop with a few friends to sell jewelry. He saw an old goldsmith with holy marks all over his body.
The holy marks means like this kind of marks they put on the forehead and also all over the body. Name of Rama or Krishna or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or various marks like two like this, or like this. So Shiva's devotees put like this, and Vishnu's like this. Yes.
Right. A rosary in his hand and a tuft of hair on his head. He was intently chanting Hari's name. His 3 or 4 assistants also had holy marks and wore beads around their necks. They were inside the shop making various types of jewelry. Seeing the Sattvic marks and clothing of the old goldsmith and his assistants, the man and his friends thought that they were very pious and would not cheat them. They then placed the jewelry before the old goldsmith and asked him to appraise it precisely. The old man cordially offered them a seat and asked an assistant to prepare a smoke for them. He then tested the gold on a touchstone, told them what it was worth. This is a long story, huh, Swami? It's fun.
So like 4 people. So one said Keshava, Keshava. That means in Bengali, Keshava means God's name, Sri Krishna's name, Keshava, but it has a pun. That means it has another name. Who are they? Keshava. Then other says Gopala, Gopala. That's another epithet of Sri Krishna. But that means these are cowherd boys, means fools. So another would say Hari Hari, God, another God's name, Hari Hari. But the other meaning is, can I steal from them? So another utters Hara Hara. That's another God's name, Shiva's name, Hara Hara. That, but the coded meaning is, yes, you can steal. They are fools. So they were talking all kinds of like this kinds of joke and about painting, etc., etc. Yes.
So Swami,
We sat there.
Continue the story?
No, we sat
all right.
there.
All right. So yeah, so the gold keeper ends up ripping off the other people, right?
So actually, the customers thought that they are very pious people because all the time they are chanting the name of God, but coded meaning was different. That who are they? Keshava, Keshava. He said Gopala, Gopala. That means cowherd boys. So he said, Hari, Hari, can I steal? Yes, yes. Just plunder.
Pretty clever.
So like, yeah. Similarly, that Vaishnava, humility, as in the beginning I told. So they have like this. The abbot, all will be humble, very humble. So they'll say, I am his servant. So the abbot in a monastery, so the chief monk, so he would say, Prabhu means Lord. That means he is scolding his junior. Prabhu, why you did so? And I am your servant. Please don't do like this. He said, no. I am your servant. Okay, I'll not do that, but I am your servant. But I did not do that. No, Prabhu, you did it. So I'm your servant. Please don't. Then the other person would say also like that. Then he'll be angry. I'm telling you, I'm your servant. So this is kind of humility, but in a jocular way. So like that, some so humility is there, but in words only. Yeah, go ahead.
We sat there for a long time, but no spiritual topic was discussed, just ordinary chit-chat. I thought, today I've brought a newcomer and all this idle talk is going on here. What impression will Upendra have of the master? This thought made my mouth dry, and from time to time, I glanced at Upendra anxiously. But whenever I looked at him, I noticed that he looked cheerful, as if he were enjoying the conversation. I signaled him to get up, but he motioned to me to wait for a little longer. After I'd beckoned to him 2 or 3 more times, he got up and came to me. I asked him, "What were you listening to for so long? What is there to hear in that idle conversation? That is why we call you Bengal, a rustic fellow."
Bengal is from East Bengal. That time it was not that educated, so people used to criticize that. Mm.
We used that nickname because he had a tattoo on his forehead. He replied, "Well, I was listening to wonderful conversation. Previously, I'd heard about universal love, but I'd never seen anyone display it. Today I experienced it in him, the master, when he was making merry on trifling subjects with everybody. I must come here another day. I have 3 questions to ask him." I took Upendra to the master another morning. At that time, there weren't too many people there, only a couple of his attendants and Mr. Malik, my brother-in-law.
You know,
On our way,
Swami, just a minute. Swami Vivekananda used to cut a lots of jokes. So people were, and all the time, when he was happy, everybody would laugh. But then Latu Mas told one day, "What is this laugh? When master used to make us laugh, we used to be flat on the ground. So much of fun." So Sri Ramakrishna even was a great storyteller. He would tell in a very loving and jocular way. So everybody was impressed, and this purity of the character, that was charming. Yeah, go ahead.
I took Upendra to the master another morning. At that time, there weren't too many people there, only a couple of his attendants and Mr. Malik, my brother-in-law. On our way there, I told Upendra categorically, "If you have any questions, ask him yourself. Only then will you get a satisfying answer. Don't ask your questions through someone else." But he was shy by nature, and he did just what I'd forbidden him to do. He asked his question through Mr. Malik, and the master answered. As I watched Upendra's face, I saw that the answer did not satisfy him. I whispered to him, "It was bound to be so. I repeatedly told you that if you had any questions, ask him personally. Why don't you ask yourself? Why are you engaging a lawyer?" 40. God is both with form and without form, like ice and water. He then took courage and asked, "Sir, does God have form or is he formless? And if he is both, how can those 2 contradictory natures be in him at the same time?" The master replied, "He is both with form and without form, like ice and water." Upendra had studied a science course in college, so the master's simile satisfied him. Upendra was so pleased with this explanation that he asked no further questions. After a while, he bowed down to the master and took his leave. As we were leaving the house, I asked him, "Upendra, you mentioned that you had 3 questions. Why did you leave after asking only one?" He replied, "Don't you understand? That one question has solved all 3 of my
One
questions."
one answer.
Oh, that one answer had solved all 3 of my questions.
You see, another thing, when you go to great soul, many of your questions are answered automatically. You know, it is said, Chitra Vata Tarur Mule, Vriddha Shishya Gurur Yuva, Gurustu Mauna Vyakhyanam, Shishyastu Chinna Shamshaya. That means the Dakshinamurti Stotra. So here, the Guru is young in age, but disciples are all old. And Guru is explaining with his silence, and all the doubts of the disciples are disappearing. You know, when you go to the ocean, you see the immensity. Ah. So all the questions are answered. So that happens when you see a great one. all questions disappear. And see, it is very difficult. This, you cannot answer anything intellectually. God has form, God also is without form. How that can be? But Sri Ramakrishna gives simple answer, and that removes all the doubt. One thing, those who are simple, their doubts are cleared. But those who are crooked, their doubt never satisfied. They will ask a further question. So it is like Shamshay Atma Vinashyati. Those who are doubtful, it is difficult for them to remove doubts. Therefore, the simple attitude is the best attitude. Be open, you'll see things will be cleared by itself. If you open your eyes, you can see the sun in sunlight. But if you close your eyes, you cannot see. It is simple as that. Yes. Or just time. Okay, you finish this one.
Okay, so yeah, we're almost at the end. Here we go. 41. Atul is irritated by Ram Datta's words. Perhaps you remember that quite often at that time, Ramchandra Datta used to eat his meal early at home and then come to the master carrying his office clothes in a bag. He would spend an hour or two there, then change his clothes to go to his office. When the master was answering Upendra's question that day, Ram suddenly entered the room wearing his office clothes to hear the master's response. As soon as we left, Ram said, Atul, bring Upendra to me. The master's reply to his question is too complicated for him to understand. He must read this book I've written, Tattva Prakashika. Only then will he understand the master's words. I was annoyed at this and blurted out, Brother Ram, you met the master 7 years before we did, and you have visited him often since then. You say that Upendra will not understand what the master told us, and that your book will explain to him what the master couldn't make clear himself. What sort of idea is this? If you want to present your book to Upendra to read, please do so. That is a different matter. Brother Ram was a little embarrassed, but nonetheless, he gave his book to Upendra.
Yeah, like many times we also experience, like, whatever is logical, when it is explained, somebody comments, oh, no, you'll find this in that book or those book. You see, in case of Sri Ramakrishna, whatever came naturally, that would remove all the doubts. That's why Swamiji said, this time Sri Ramakrishna came to destroy all the doubts. Shamshaya Rakshasha Nasha Mahastram. In other incarnations, many demons were killed by the incarnation. But this time, Sri Ramakrishna incarnation removed all our doubts. So, if we are real seeker, doubts will be removed, and it will be removed naturally. Only we need to be open. Those who have doubts ingrained in them, it's difficult to go that. So anyway, let us pray to be simple and open-hearted, so that all our doubts are removed. We say our prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tatsat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Is there any question? I didn't ask. He's
I had
Akshay.
a question.
Yes, Akshay. Go ahead.
Like, why Sri Ramakrishna only helped Girish Ghosh? There were also other immoral people, so why only him?
Yeah, many other Kalipada Ghosh, those who came in contact. You know, many he did physically, but many he did also by wish. Read the life of Kalipada Ghosh. He was also like that. And there are two books. God lived with them, and the second book is They Lived with God. So those are direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, household disciples. But these are recorded, many are not recorded. M used to go on Sundays or holidays. But many things that happened at Dakshineshwar was not recorded. Say Rashik Chandra was a sweeper. You may not have heard about him. Rashik was sweeper and Sri Ramakrishna blessed him. Not only that, you see later many things came to light. Sri Ramakrishna blessed many people, but few were recorded, right? Hmm? Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah,
Swami,
yes, go ahead.
I have one question. Were there more people or fewer people when the master became ill? I've read that people left because they had to pay money.
Yeah, some people left, but some new people also came. You know, when an incarnation comes, he influences the whole era. Even Sri Ramakrishna is influencing now by silent presence. If you call intensely, Sri Ramakrishna will appear before you. So it is not that he disappeared. He cannot. That the painter had a dream-like situation. So he remembered and he painted. What is the name I'm forgetting? Anyway, so many people, even today, that is why it is said, Addapiho Karen Lila Gora Rai, Kono Kono Bhagyabane Dekhibare Pai. Even today, the Gora Rai, that means Gaurang Mahaprabhu, is doing his Leela. Only few blessed people may witness him. So similar with Sri Ramakrishna, even Holy Mother. Don't think that they have disappeared. Even today, people witness them. And only thing, you should be sincere. You should be open. You should be full of one-pointed devotion. And ask anything, it will be given unto you. Seek, knock, and the door will be open unto you. So this is not words. These words never failed. Never. Thank you.
Pranam.
Swamiji.
Namaste.
Pranam Swamiji.
Namaste. Namaste. Hari Om.
Jai Mata.
Yeah.